perfection is not real, and life is so much more beautiful when you just enjoy it. Like, it's one thing to say you enjoy the journey, but it's a whole other thing to be present and in the moment. And I would tell her, like, life is going to be okay. You're about to embark on a journey that you couldn't even dream, and it's going to be amazing. So enjoy each moment while it lasts.
Welcome to Season 2 of the Amani Experience podcast. In this podcast, you will experience wisdom, advice, and stories from creatives all over the world. Your host is the award-winning Amani Roberts, who is a DJ, music producer, professor, voracious book reader, and a skilled chef. On the show, we love to share the stories of creative professionals, especially people who have gone from the corporate life to the creative life. Once again, welcome to Season 2 of the Amani Experience podcast.
Welcome to episode 73 of the Amani Experience podcast. For this episode, we have Amaris Davidson with us. 3 things that I really liked about this episode. We had a great conversation. When she talks about how the seeds she has planted many, many years before, she talks about like her invisible work. They're now blooming. That's very inspiring. So I was happy to have that discussion. Throughout the entire interview, she has a positive attitude on just everything that she's going through and working towards. That's very contagious. And then she also has a really strong faith in terms of why she is here on this planet and what she's working towards. I think you're really going to like this interview. Remember to reach me. You can email me at podcast@amaniexperience.com. Remember to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a rating and a review, and tell a friend about the podcast as well. Thank you very much for listening, and to the show we go. Our guest today has appeared in many of today's top television series, recurring in the CW's Heart of Dixie, and guest and co-starring on the CW's Jane the Virgin, CBS's Scorpion, CBS's hit shows NCIS, How I Met Your Mother, and A Criminal Minds, as well as their legendary daytime show, Young and the Restless, TNT's Rizzoli and Isles, and ABC's Mixology. Our guest also recently had a recurring role on the new Hulu original series Light as a Feather. She's appeared in several other hit TV shows over the past few years, including ABC's Grey's Anatomy, ABC's Castle, ABC pilot Cuz Brothers, the CW's 90210, and Nickelodeon's Sam and Cat. Our guest is also passionate about creating with friends. She leads 2 different web series, the Process series, which aired on Black and Sexy TV, and The Value of X. As a former dancer for both the NBA Houston Rockets and WNBA Houston Comets, as well as a former college track and field runner, nice, and college cheerleader, she stays incredibly active and fit. Our guest also has a beautiful voice and was signed as a professional recording artist with Matthew Knowles' record label. Any time outside of acting is left to leading at her church, reading, and writing books. I would like to welcome Amaris Davidson to the Amani Experience podcast.
Hello.
Hello. Good. So we got that down. Great intro. Great bio. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. So we're going to do a geographical check-in. Right now we're in the mobile studio in Manhattan Beach, California. But where did you grow up?
I grew up I was born in Seattle, but I grew up in Louisiana. My dad was in the military, so we moved to Fort Polk, Louisiana, in the middle of a forest. It was amazing. And then at about 21, I moved to Houston, Texas, and lived there for about 8 years and found my way to Los Angeles.
On your way to Los Angeles. So you went to high school in Leesville.
I did.
Yes,
Leesville,
known
Louisiana.
as the best hometown in the world. Why do they call it that? Why do they say that?
Oh, because it's amazing. Our mascot doesn't actually exist physically. It's literally a wampus cat. And every time I've been asked, what's a wampus cat? It's the spirit. It's the spirit behind the school. It's in the people, which is, it's amazing to me. I love that.
All right. So you're a track and field star in high school, and then you first went to Northwestern State University on scholarship?
I sure did. In high school, I ran the hurdles, the high jump, I did the triple jump, and I was the anchor for the 4x1.
Okay.
And I made the mistake of going to track camp, where I ended up getting my scholarship at Northwestern. And my track coach had us run the pentathlon at the end of the camp, and I won. So after my first year being recruited for the hurdles and the high jump, he transitioned me to a heptathlete, which is 7 more events.
Yes.
It was amazing.
Okay. All right. So you found your way from Northwestern State, then to Texas Southern.
Yes.
TSU.
Yes.
All right. All right. So we were there, and then let's first figure out what inspired you to move to Houston, first of all, and then how did you come across and start working with the Houston Comets and the Rockets?
Well, I would like to say that I was inspired to move, but my family was worried that I wouldn't graduate. And I was like, wait a minute, I'm literally on the dean's list. What's going on? So my little sister went to Texas Southern University, and so she was like, come live with me. You know, you want to do acting, you want to do modeling, come here. And so I did, and I didn't know what it would entail. I left after 3 years at my previous school, and it was like an adventure began. We heard about the audition on the radio for the Houston Comets once, then we saw it, and then someone said it to me. It was like threes, right? And so I went to the audition, and prior to going to that audition, I had auditioned for the Texans, which was the NFL team, and I really didn't know anything about football. It just, it was why not? And the clothing that you wear there is completely different than what you would wear for the Comets. And I didn't know that, because one is hip hop and one is, more jazz. And so I showed up in my little tiny outfit, and everybody's like swagged out in their sweats and their cool jackets. And I was like, okay, I'm mortified. It was probably the hardest audition I've ever been a part of, just because I grew up cheerleading, and it was heavily dance. It was a dance team. It wasn't a cheerleading team. But I love to dance. And so, I don't know if you've ever heard of the book Strength Finders, but a learner is in one of my it's one of my top 5 strengths. So I just, I learned it as best as I could, and I ended up getting chosen. So right. I did that for a season. I learned so much from my teammates. They were amazing. And they actually prepared me for the Houston Rockets audition. I remember the first time I did a pirouette, which is a spin. I ended up on the ground, and my teammates were like, "You have to spot," and I was like, "I don't know what that means."
Oh yeah.
And it just means pick a point on the wall and find it again. And so they prepared me for that audition, and I would go on to dance for the Houston Rockets for 3 seasons.
All right.
And that was just. There are no words for the experience that I had there. I love basketball, too, so I had the best seats in the house.
Okay. Yes, you did. And you grew up a Rockets fan?
I did not. I actually grew up a Bulls fan. My dad was a Bulls fan. So
Michael Jordan.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
Yes.
And tell us about what it was like going on tour as a trampoline dancer as well.
Trampoline dunker.
Dunker, there,
yeah.
even better, yes.
It was, first of all, it was amazing. I didn't even know you could do, that was an option in life, right? But I thought it was interesting that all of the things that I had done previously kind of they came together to be able to be a trampoline dunker. My track and field, it's the same run as the high jump, same run as the triple jump and the long jump. My gymnastics experience as a kid came in handy, and just my athleticism. It was, I thought I was Michael Jordan. I'm not going to lie. I think I have we had a spread in ESPN once, and it just shows me I'm actually dunking. It's hilarious.
Nice. We got to get some footage of that video, and then we can look at the pictures as well too.
Oh
that will be a necessity. So we'll rewind a quick minute. When did you know, because you said you knew as a youth, when did you know that you wanted to be an actress? I
think ultimately that's what I always wanted to be. I think it's really easy to be talked out of things like that. Especially growing up in a small town, it's something that's a little more unrealistic than other things. And that was the language that I'd used for so long. Like, oh, well, I want to do all the unrealistic things in life. And people were like, what does that mean? I'm like, I want to act and I want to model. And so even as early as 8, I remember we did, my sisters and I did a singing contest. And we won that. We did a lip syncing contest, and we also did a singing competition. I used to do little commercials, like with my cereal box or my tennis shoes, and my mom would record it. So I've kind of always been that way. And then I really, really, really wanted to be in Living Color.
How you living?
How you living? Yes. Oh man, Jim Carrey and Jamie Foxx, they were my people.
All right. Okay. Speaking of singing, explain to us, what was your experience like working with and being a part of Lady Lux?
Oh my gosh. First of all, I love them. We still talk to this day. I just texted them the other day, and it was like a labor of love, really. We were a group of friends who, well, actually we weren't friends yet. Two of us were friends. I was the middle person, so I was friends with one of the other young ladies, and I was friends with the other young lady, and we met, and we kind of sang for each other. We had a rapper in the group, so she rapped, and we were like, let's do this. And so all of us danced for the Houston Rockets at one point, and so it was a very high energy show. We aren't strangers to working hard, and so we did the running in the heels, and we had a show put together within 2 weeks of forming the group. We had made relationships with some of the top producers in the game. Brian Michael Cox is a very good friend of ours, and he just, he believed in us, and we literally, I think All-Star Weekend that same year, and we had shows set up and lined up to go. We were just very hard workers. And it was so much fun just being in the studio. I didn't even know that I could sing that late. I thought I'd used all my voice in a day, and then our sessions would start at like 11 o'clock at night. But you can't replace that kind of time, the bond that is built in that amount of time, like in those sessions. So they're my sisters for life.
Good. And what happened? Like, did you release an album, go on tour?
Well, we were in the process of being upstream to a major label after signing with Matthew, and it just wasn't panning out. Girl groups were kind of out of style, if you will. And so we ended up working with another singer-songwriter, and we created a lot of different songs. We performed at the Tom Joyner family reunion. We performed at Spotlight Live in New York and several places all over Houston and Texas. And we had songs in like these toys they're called Baby Jams for Walmart. Had a couple songs on iTunes. And ultimately it just boiled down to the fact that we were not getting any younger. And I think we just kept hitting roadblocks, and in my case, it kind of ended up being where I always thought that singing would lead me to acting, and it kind of went around it. My acting showed up in a different way, and so I went that route. Brittany, who was the lead singer of the group, she is phenomenal. She's a part of a show called Step Africa. They travel all over the world. She's performed in the White House several times, and she sings and steps. It's amazing. And then my good friend Dot, she's the rapper of the group. She's currently having her fourth child, and she is a business mogul. Like, she managed a couple different artists. She's very talented, and so we all just ended up going our separate ways. All right. Our own paths.
Yeah, good story.
Yeah.
You mentioned before that you're a learner, and you're always learning. What are we learning right now?
Currently, I am learning. It's interesting. I looked through some of the questions that you may be asking me, and so this may answer one of those. But I'm currently learning how to implore my boundaries. Yes, okay. I'm learning how. I'll elaborate. Just growing up, I'm a Christian, and so growing up in the church in the South, I think it's kind of frowned upon to say no, to say that you don't want to do something. It's more like, a good Christian would help people. They would help people do this, or they would help them do that, or and so I just didn't know how to say no. I didn't know how to say that I'm exhausted and I need a break, or I can't do that. I don't want to do that. And it's completely okay to say no. And you don't even have to explain it. When I learned that you didn't have to explain why you don't want to do something, I was like, wow, That's real freedom. Dr. Henry Cloud and John Townsend's book, Boundaries, is like, I implore everyone to read it. It's life-changing. And I also think, I thought that, well, when I read this book, I'm gonna show everybody how wrong they have done me, and how they shouldn't always ask me how to do these things. And at the end of the day, what the book taught me is that I am responsible for getting my needs met. I am responsible for putting boundaries in place, and it's no one else's responsibility, because people are just trying to get their needs met. So if you don't say no, they're going to ask you.
Yes. All right. Good. I'm sure we'll circle back to that topic a little later.
Yay.
For sure. For your singing career, which singers did you closely identify your style and your tone of voice with?
Well, I grew up listening to Celine Dion and Mariah Carey and Whitney Houston, and I love the Dixie Chicks. I hope I don't get in trouble for saying that. I just did.
No trouble. Yes, no trouble.
And then Brian McKnight, his just style of storytelling. His music was probably the most closely like the soundtrack to my life.
So we're thinking Brian McKnight like Anytime? Are we thinking 6812? Are we thinking Crazy Love?
Somebody knows his Brian. Let's go. I mean...
One Last Cry, Brian,
literally,
which is early.
I think probably the most formative, or like Anytime is my favorite Brian McKnight song.
All right.
But every phase of my life, from One Last Cry to 6812 to, Superhero, all of those, they were... I could remember, if I listened to a Brian McKnight song, I can remember exactly where I was, which is pretty cool.
Okay.
But I love, I love Celine Dion. I think she just, there's no words. Mariah Carey, they're like, people that obviously I think everybody wanted to sound like Mariah at one point in their life, whether that was in the shower or actually trying to do it professionally. And then Whitney Houston was just, she's a dream you have. Like, well, maybe one day when I'm in heaven, I could sound like that. But it never stopped me from trying.
Good. I'm
a self-taught singer, so I didn't get the training and all of that. And I remember probably for the first... all the way through high school, my sisters were like, shut up. And I'm like, thanks for the vote of confidence, guys. But it didn't stop me, because singing, I started as a poet and transitioned to songwriting. And it was just a great way to express myself. And singing it allowed me, it was an outlet for me. I guess the same way like dance would be for a dancer.
True.
I love music.
Okay. Now you're talking to a Mariah Carey stan here. We don't have to go down that timeline, because she was very formative in my life as well.
Man.
Back from Vision of Love,
Come
Love
on.
Takes Time, Emotions,
Forever, Open
Yes.
Arms.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, we'll quiz you a little later. Even We Belong Together. That's newer Mariah. That was good.
Was that E equals MC squared?
And then you had the Emancipation of Mimi.
Yeah.
We could go.
Oh my goodness!
Even the Beautiful Ones.
Yeah.
That's with Drew Hill.
Yeah.
All right.
One Sweet Day. I used to listen to her. I worked for basically a self-made millionaire, and he'd had like 29 businesses since college, and he was 40. And sometimes the days got tough. I'm not gonna lie, they got tough. And so when he was out of the office, I would just turn on Mariah Carey #1 hits and just sing.
Yep.
It was beautiful.
You got about 18 or 19 of them. Let's hope she gets to 20. She's going to get to 20 soon.
Yes.
If you were going to summarize yourself in 20 or 30 seconds or less, where you are right now, how would you summarize yourself?
Right now in life, I am exactly where I'm intended to be, and I know it, which is really cool. I am on an adventure that I've always dreamed of being on.
Well said.
Yeah.
Now, in your opinion, what's important for creative professionals such as yourself and myself to succeed in today's business environment?
I think, I was thinking through this, and I think the most important thing is to recognize that you have value as a creative, and I think it took a long time for me to understand that even though I don't have a 9-to-5, I bring value to this world, through my creativity. And I think every person who is creative, and I think we are all creative, honestly, But I think just honoring the value that you bring to the environment that you're in, I think that's so important. And knowing that, maybe you don't do spreadsheets, but maybe you know a creative way to make that spreadsheet function better, and just really just valuing your creativity. I think that's super important. I think that's number one, honestly. And then just remembering that when you're creative, you are generative. You generate things. And so maybe you have an idea that they haven't even thought of yet. And so I think that's important to remember too.
Interesting. Mm-hmm. Now, growing up, were you a big soap opera fan?
Okay, so this is what's really weird. So the music for The Young and the Restless is etched into my brain because when I was at daycare, I went to daycare very young, and that song literally was my nap time. And I remember thinking, oh my gosh, just the sound of it was almost like, oh no, I got to go to sleep, but I got cookies afterwards, so it was okay. And so I didn't actually get to watch them growing up because it was my nap time, but I just remember that being a very big part of like my life in a way.
Yeah. And then when you heard Mary J. Blige sample that theme song, what were your thoughts when you heard that?
Oh, I didn't hear that. Which one was
So
this?
No More Drama? You heard her song?
Oh, okay. Yeah. I forgot. Yeah. Well, that was a great song. That's what I felt about that. No more drama, please.
Yeah. So what was it like? Because I grew up, I was more of an All My Children kind of guy, but Young and the Restless would come on early, so I watched 30 minutes of that and then get to All My Children. So I know about Victor Newman and Nikki, and you acted and worked with them. What was that like?
Man, I mean, wow. You would think after being on television that long that you would, maybe kind of wing it, right? And that is not the case. Victor Newman, my goodness, he had, like, just reading through the script, there were times when he was like, I wouldn't say this. Like, he was still invested in his role, and I think that is so amazing. And every take, they gave every take. I was fortunate they had just had a week off, and so it was definitely more playful. I know that the soap world can be a little stressful, but even, when I did ask to take a picture, just because, these are icons. And Victor has the same birthday as me. I thought that was really cool.
All right.
They were like, of course, to the point where I finished early, and I was like, they had to finish another scene. I was like, oh, maybe I won't get my picture. They're like, no, stay. Like, we're going to get your picture after. We'll be finished with this shortly. And so they like encouraged me to stay, and then they took a picture with me. I thought, wow, what awesome humans. But I don't think you get to be on television that long and not be, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like a good person, per se. So.
Right. And there's chances that you can come back on the show as well because of your role. You were like the doctor.
You never know.
Yeah.
And I remember asking the person who knows all of the doctor terms. He was teaching me all the doctor terms, and he said the person who was their previous doctor had went his own direction and was starting a show or something like that. And so, Genoa City needs a doctor. So
here we go.
I am available.
We're going to put it out there. Yes.
I am available.
So if we're looking at your career, and you've done a lot of interesting and fun and amazing things, what would you pick as the turning point of your career?
The turning point of my career. Yes, I've had a snowball fight on the Great Wall of China. I got to trampoline dunk all over, Asia. But I would say within the last month, this has been the turning point. All of the, I think this was the time when the foundation that I was laying was solidified. I've had a couple movies come out recently, recurring in a show, guest starring on the #1 show on television. I think all of these things have just kind of fell in place and just made it so. A friend of mine was like, "You broke 5,000." I was like, "What are you talking about?" And he showed me on IMDb, there's like a star meter that you have, and I broke 5,000. I was like, what? I remember when it was like 48,000 or something, and I was like, wow. I don't really know what that means, but I think that I'm at the turning point now. And so it's only up from here. But I am a person who enjoys the journey, so,
The journey will continue.
It's going to continue.
Over. Yes.
You know?
Explain to everyone what's kind of happened for you in the last month, because you had a couple, 2 or 3 really big occurrences. So
yeah, I had a movie on Lifetime come out. I recurred on, or am recurring, and I'm also the show's choreographer for Light as a Feather. I had a movie come out in theaters, Killer Kate.
Killer
it's a horror
Kate.
film.
Good.
Just before Halloween. I guest starred on NCIS.
Yes, which at time of recording just occurred yesterday, but we'll put a link to the show, bootleg or not, on the show notes.
Yeah. Well, and actually Criminal Minds aired yesterday, and then NCIS was the week before. But, I mean, literally, I was like one thing after another, and I was like, wow. Because I'm a journey person, sometimes I forget all of the seeds that I've planted, and to have them all, you know, blossom at the same time was like, oh, okay, we're doing this.
Yes, we are.
It's very cool.
Since you spoke about planting seeds, how have you been able to maintain your patience? Because it's very hard to be patient, and a lot of us want things tomorrow when you had to wait many, many years to see these fruits of your labor bloom. How have you been able to hone your patience and stick with it?
Well, honestly, my faith has been a very defining part of that, and just understanding that I am doing what I'm supposed to be doing, like in life. And so just knowing that there is no that can deter me. And I recognize this is a numbers game. You know, it's a numbers game, and you're going to get no's. I think if you decide to be in the entertainment industry, you need to be aware of that and be okay with that, get comfortable with it, and not see a no as a failure, but as an opportunity to learn something, to grow. And maybe you've done exactly what you were supposed to do. It's just the next tally mark on your number chart. You know, like I said, I love the process. I love learning. Every set that I've ever been on, I get to meet new people. I never leave a set without knowing my entire crew's name, my cast, my director, obviously. I think it's just a wonderful opportunity to get to know people and to ask them questions about their life. And I think that is what makes what we do so valuable and so important. I mean, sure, you can be on a huge show and it's awesome, and like, you know, that means something to people. But I think what means the most to me is those inner workings of getting to know the people that you're working with, that you're creating something with. My pastor says all the time, what we exhale, the world inhales. And I think if I'm just focusing on when is my next thing, or how can I do this, you know, just focused on the grind, that's what I'm going to be exhaling to the world, and I don't want that. I want people to inhale that life is a process, and things take time, and when they are, you don't want it before it's ready. My goodness. You don't want it before it's ready. And so I think that's what allows me to be patient with things.
Good. And for people who are maybe up-and-coming actors or actresses that are struggling with perseverance and resilience, what advice would you give them to kind of stick with it? Because there can be some low times you get a bunch of no's. You're like, I'm never going to get a yes. But what advice would you give them? Number
one, is this what you're supposed to be doing? And you have to answer that honestly. I think being honest with yourself is probably the most important thing you can do. And if the answer is yes, then find something to do every single day. You know, if you want to be in the Olympics, there's something that you do every single day to get to that end goal. If you want to be in the NBA, this is how many shots you're putting up. This is how many laps you're running. Track, same thing, right? So actors, we have homework that we have to do. You know, you need to know your market. So there are things that you can be doing. I call it, a friend of mine, do invisible work together. It's the stuff that no one's going to see, but it's going to change the way that you approach your craft. There, even just like knowing, okay, if you get discouraged, just go back and look at what was Viola Davis's first role. What was her breakout role? What was the difference between the time span between her breakout role and when she became who we know her to be? Nothing happens overnight. That's not real. Come on. And I think we know that. Like, you know that. I mean, nothing. You don't put something in the oven and it's done in a minute. You don't put a seed in the ground and it's a tree tomorrow. It's the same thing. I think the more you understand that, it'll bring joy to the process of it. And then you can, you could read the trades every day. You can learn the language, so that when you are on these sets, even if you do background, people sometimes have, negative feelings towards background. But if you are coming to LA and you've never been on a set, you are not ready to step into an audition room anyway. It's almost detrimental to you to automatically get an agent. What do you need an agent for? Or a manager? What are they managing? And you need to know how to manage yourself better than anybody else. And I think doing invisible work is what will help you create a brand and create a product that is worth pitching and selling. And I think that's something you can do every day.
All right. Professor Keating did not become Professor Keating overnight.
Come on.
How to Get Away with Murder reference.
Yes.
Why do you love what you do?
I love what I do because I get the opportunity to, I'm a storyteller. I get the opportunity to share stories that maybe are not my life, but I have the capacity to tell. I get to learn something new about myself every time I step into a story. And I really believe that what we do is one of the most important things in the world. Especially like with what's going on right now with the fires and shootings that have been happening, I think you can never lose the value in entertainment and taking someone's mind off of, harsh reality. And it's not saying, ignore reality. It's just, I think it's a great way to cope with it and think of a better possibility.
And then what is something that scares you?
Scares me.
You can answer it in your Southern accent if you want to. I've seen that one as well. So
I do have a Southern accent. I got to be on the Heart of Dixie, and they sent me some samples on how to speak in a Southern accent. Now, granted, I grew up in Louisiana, so that's a thing. But if I had to say one thing, not many things am I afraid of, but I am the only one of my mother's children without children. And I think what scares me the most would be if she were to pass before I had children, and they don't get to know her. That would scare me.
Well, we're going to put it out there that won't happen.
Thank you.
So, but that's, yeah.
Oh
We'll continue to be patient with that, too, because that's a process as well in a different way.
Got to start somewhere, girl.
Yes, we do. But we can discuss that afterwards.
Yeah.
So, your industry, the acting industry is extremely crowded. How do you rise above all the noise and distinguish yourself from the competition?
I think recognizing that there is no competition. There are people that are in your field, obviously, but working on yourself and making yourself aware of even the things that they are doing, I think, is how you win at that game. When I walk into a room, there are going to be people that look exactly like me. They could be my sister. I've walked into a room and met a cousin. So I think the most important thing is to know that we are a part of a creative community, and you're not in competition with anyone. And I think that there are roles that are going to be for you, and there's some that just aren't going to be for you. And to try to hold on to something that is not yours is a waste of energy and a waste of time. And so take it as a learning lesson is what I would say. And I know I talk a lot about that. It's because it's how my mind works. And sometimes it can be hard to put your mind around that. But there's so much peace in knowing that I have done everything that I can possibly do to prepare for this role. And this was just not mine. But that means that what you just said no to opened up a door for you to say yes to something that is yours and that you're going to flourish in.
Well said.
Thank you.
Well said. How has a failure or an apparent failure set you up for later success? Do you have a favorite failure of yours?
Failure, I think. That probably started with my track and field career. Just my first year, I didn't train at all between the summer of my senior year of high school and college. I didn't even know you were supposed to do that. I was like, I'm going to college. This is awesome. I'm going to run track. And I thought I was going to die every single day. And it was so hard. And I wanted to quit. And my sister and her they were boyfriend and girlfriend at the time. They let me go with them home to Arkansas. There's a couple things you do in Arkansas. You eat, you sleep, and you work out. And so I trained the entire summer, and I came back, and I just had a completely different experience. And so I think failing miserably and just saying, okay, this is way too hard, and then just regrouping, I think that set me up for, how I would maneuver in this field. My first couple of auditions were track and field, and my first 3 bookings were track and field. And I remember thinking, are you serious? Like, this is so cool that I would have so much trouble my first year of college and just wanting to quit track. And by the time I even got there, I was exhausted. To then booking a Nike print campaign, a Nike commercial, an NCAA commercial, all within like the first 6 months of moving here. I just understood. I was like, okay, this is all connected. And if I just pay attention, it will come together. So that's what I would say. I think a favorite failing would be, I read for the show Rebel. Yes, I didn't book the part, but I got to read for John Singleton. So, I mean, there's that.
Going back to the Nike commercial, that's like art imitating life.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So you spoke about how you hit, and you've now made the breakthrough through the top 5,000 for IMDb. Mm-hmm. So what comes with that is you're going to get more critics, more haters, as we call them.
Yeah.
How do you handle your critics?
What are those? That's how I handle them. I'm kidding. I think the way I see it is, if you are giving me positive feedback, not even positive, if you're giving me a critique, it is my responsibility to decipher whether this is a critique or this is just criticism. If it is a critique, then it is my responsibility to apply it to my life. And if it's criticism, everyone is entitled to their own opinion. And that's okay. I'm not going to please everybody, and I'm not going to try to.
Amen. Mm-hmm. On a Thursday. Tell us about the darkest time in your life, how you got through that, and what did you learn from that experience?
Well, that's easy. I found myself crying on the floor of my closet, just asking God to change my thoughts. I was in a relationship then, and I struggled with fear of abandonment and insecurity within the relationships construct. And the reason I can even articulate that is because a book came out of it. But I had such trouble deciphering, what was real and what was not. I think it's easy to believe like, oh, that's true. But what is real to us and what is true can be two different things. I spent a lot of time reading on neuroscience, just digging into this because I like I said, I'm a learner and I want to be better. And so I read a lot of books on neuroscience, and when you think a thought, your brain literally creates matter. And whether that is a positive thought or a negative thought, that is now the web that is formed that you see through and that you hear through. And so there was an undoing that had to happen, and I spent time just reading books that affirmed the truth. One of those books being the Bible. I read Psalm 139 like every day for a year, just trying to figure out who am I and why is that important? Why do I even matter, And I think on the other side of that, I was able to help so many young women who were experiencing the same thing, and that's how that's really was the final push, like recognizing that there are other people who are experiencing this, and I can help them get through it. And I think that's one of the times that I'm most courageous, is when I'm helping other people. So.
And what was the book that came out of it?
The book is called The Art of Self-Defense, 7 Principles That Will Help Protect You from Yourself. It is one in a series that I'm working on. That one's complete, and then I have 3 more that I'll be writing.
And can we purchase this book today?
I had to finish having some conversations, but that is something I'm actually meeting with my publisher later this month.
Fair enough.
To get that started.
Fair enough. An author. I see good things.
Yay.
I see good things. Who was the most influential person for you growing up?
Obviously my mom is amazing. She's basically She-Ra. And, not just raising like five children, but then also not even just five. Like my brothers and sisters had friends who were put out of their house, and she would take them in. I'm like, Mom, we already don't have enough food. So obviously my mother, but there is my cheerleading coach in 5th grade, Vicky Carmalis. And she just taught me, even through cheerleading, like the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. And she taught me that it would matter. Having integrity would matter, and having influence as a cheerleader. In 5th grade, she taught me this. And I don't know if she intended to, but this is what I took from it, that the influence that you'll have over people, you are responsible for that. And I think just her attention to detail and excellence, not perfection, but excellence, was something that stayed with me even now. It's probably one of my favorite things, is to try to pursue excellence. Yeah.
We're going to find her. We're going to share this quote that you just said about her, and we're going to give it to her.
She's on my Facebook.
All right. We're going to find her, and we're going to get her reaction and play it for you. We have another thing in common. There's a movie that you said had a big impact on your life that I also love as well, Love and Basketball.
Oh, yeah.
Tell us why that had such a big impact on your life.
Oh, my gosh. I felt like it was like my first love story, Nothing else matters. Like the world just goes quiet, like when you're with that one person, and you think you're going to be together forever, and then it doesn't work out that way. And even though their ending was beautiful, I think the reality is even just that break where they had to separate, that's so hard to do. That's so hard to say, okay, if this is for me, if this is really for me, then it will come back. And I think that had such an impact on me because I needed to know that. My mom would say that to me all the time, and I was like, okay, I don't want to hear that. That is stupid. I'm like, quit saying that to me, please. He's gone. He's never coming back. But even he, we're friends, and you don't realize when you're a kid that time will really heal all things.
Yeah. Speaking of music, that soundtrack was quite good. Specifically, Michelle Andiocello's "That Fool of Me," the song that happens at the end. Yes.
What a beautiful song.
Mm-hmm. Have you listened? I'm sure you've listened to the words. So
yeah.
Whew.
That's not when I hear music. That is what I'm listening for.
That's good.
The words.
That's very good. That's very good. What do you find easy to do that your friends find hard to do?
Number one, read. I have so many friends who are like, I am not about to read. Like, I don't have time to read. And that's something that I make time to do. I love to read. I love to learn. I know that there are things that I'm going to read in a book that are for me, and then sometimes they are for someone else. And I feel like if I've read that book, and now I'm entrusted to share that information. So reading. And then my number one on Strength Finder is positivity. I don't know if you can tell that or not, but
very refreshing. Keep going.
I think sometimes my friends can get down, and even if they are, a lot of my friends are believers, but even if they're not, I think sometimes it's hard to think on the thing that you want, no matter what is happening. And I try to keep it positive. I try to always redirect them and encourage them in a way that will spur them on to keep going. And then I love, like my sister used to say this to me all the time. She's like, Amaris, you can't talk to strangers. I was like, why? How am I going to get to know them? And that is probably one thing that I do that my friends may find it hard to do, is to meet people or to talk to people even. I will talk to you in the grocery store. If I hear something in the line while I'm getting coffee and it can help you, I'm going to tell you. That's just how I am.
All right. We're going to head down to Houston, talk to 21-year-old Amaris.
Oh, goodness.
You're at TSU, correct, when you were 21?
Yep.
And we're going to give yourself some advice based on what you know now. what advice would you share?
Calm down, girl. My goodness. Everything is going to be okay. That's what I would tell her. Like, perfection is not real. And life is so much more beautiful when you just enjoy it. Like, it's one thing to say you enjoy the journey, but it's a whole other thing to be present and in the moment. And I would tell her, like, life is going to be okay. You're about to embark on a journey that you couldn't even dream. And it's going to be amazing. So enjoy each moment while it lasts.
For people who are struggling to enjoy the journey, they're always worried about what's next.
Yeah.
What advice would you share with them to maybe get them to take a step back and to kind of relax a little and calm down?
Calm down. I think I just had this conversation yesterday with someone at church, and gratitude automatically draws you back to the moment that you're in. It doesn't allow you to go forward or to go backward, but it allows you to just be thankful for the moment that you're in. And something that I always say, as a believer, when you feel stressed out and you've put yourself in the future, most of the time you don't take God with you. You're there by yourself. That's why it's so stressful. So if you're going to go to the future, make sure that you take him with you and know that you're not going to be doing it alone. That's what I would say.
All right. What is the one lesson in life that took you the longest to learn?
How to say no.
Mm-hmm.
How to say no gracefully and how to build boundaries. Because I love helping people, sometimes I would help people fulfill their dreams and their goals, and I would put myself on the back burner.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think that particularly is what God had in mind when he said, consider others better than yourself. I think it's more along the lines of how you love your neighbor as yourself. So if you're not loving yourself, then how can you give something away to someone else? And I think it was probably more of a protection mechanism. I'm one of those people that, I mean this in the most humble way possible, but when God has shown me like who I could be, that is terrifying to me, more so than failing is. So I think just, creating boundaries so that I can run and not be held back from what I'm supposed to be doing.
And in those moments where you see what you can be and it's terrifying for you, how do you work through that, get past that?
A lot of breathing. I recently got certified as a yoga instructor.
Oh, 200 or 500 hours?
200.
Okay, we got to get to the 500 next. We'll get there.
Well, I'm actually doing my first retreat with my sister, who is the person who certified me next year. So I'm really excited about that. But I think really just breathing. Like, we walk through life and hold our breath all the time. And I think just reminding my breath to be present and to be there. And really just literally just taking the first step. Like, okay, so what? Like, you're terrified. That's awesome. Now what? Just as Joyce Meyer would say, do it afraid. Do it afraid.
Yeah.
And every time that I've stepped into something greater than I could ever imagine, and then there's a capacity that is expanded in me, and I think that's so cool.
Agree.
Mm-hmm.
Now, you have a diverse set of interests, and you do many different things. You act, you write, produce, yoga retreats now. Why do you feel it's important to diversify and I hate to use the word income streams, but just diversify the things you do, especially in this day and age, and how has it benefited you and your career?
Well, as a storyteller is what I would say. All of the things that I've done have been able to be used in my craft. But even more than that, I'm a servant. And so nothing that I do, it doesn't stop. My servanthood doesn't stop at the end of a Sunday. it's something that I can bring into all areas of my life. I really do believe that the way you do one thing is the way you do all things. And so I actually try to think about how can this area of my life benefit this area of my life. Something that I'm about to start doing is like workshops for people who are stuck. You know, whether you've been doing this for years and you're just like, what am I supposed to be doing right now? Or you just moved to LA and you have no idea where to start. I'm serving someone. I'm using the gifts that I've been given. I'm taking my experiences and all the things that have allowed me to be at this point, every book I've read, and I get to help people. So I think ultimately your gifts do make room for you.
Yes, they do.
Yeah.
Whether you like it or not.
Okay.
Every great person has a sentence.
Oh, goodness.
What is your sentence? For example, my sentence is, I love to help people unlock their creativity by teaching them how to DJ. What is your sentence?
My sentence would be, I am a bridge. I am a bridge that will connect people to the living God through creativity.
And you were worried about your sentence.
I was totally worried about my sentence.
Come on.
I'm like, how do I say this?
You said it quite well. Great job. What is one new habit you've added to your daily routine in the past year or so that has been most beneficial?
Honestly, aside from like the full yoga practice, is the breathing and meditation. I didn't even know the value of it. I didn't even understand the value of it. You hear people say, "Oh, I meditate." I'm like, "That's cute. I have things to do today," you know. And it's so like just being still. Like, stop moving. Just be still, girl. And I think just allowing myself to be still and to not necessarily empty my mind of things, but allow the voice of God to speak to me because I've shut up. So that, meditating, yeah.
You've mentioned reading several times throughout the interview. We're also very big, voracious readers here on the Amani Experience podcast. Yes. If there was 1, 2, or 3 books, maybe even 4, since you're such a big reader, that you feel people should stop what they're doing right now and start to read them immediately, what books would you recommend?
Okay. That is a very tough question. It's like asking, what's your favorite movie?
Well, we'll get to that one next.
No. So some books that have really heavily impacted my life are The Shack. And that is just, it's a book about, it's a fictional book about God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. And whether you're a believer or not, you can identify with the pain that the main character is going through and just learn something new about what's going on in your heart. I love The Kite Runner because it speaks about all the things that we experience as humans: love, betrayal, honor, just pain and greed, all of those things. And I think it does it so beautifully. It's also gut-wrenching. Get your tissue out if you just want to warn you, because I wasn't warned. I have a master's in leadership, and so one of the books that heavily impacted me was The Art of Leadership by Max Dupree. And it's the book that taught me that I am a servant leader, putting a name to how I function. And then I would say finally, The Artisan Soul by my pastor, Erwin McManus. I didn't know the value in being creative and being a creative being. And for such a long time, especially growing up in the South, it was like, that's not something you do. Get a job and go to work. And I think him putting a voice to the fact that I am creative and that there's value in that, and that is how God intended it to be. That book was life-changing for me. So for a creative, I would encourage people to read that book.
Excellent. How has getting your master's in leadership benefited you personally and professionally?
Let me tell you something. I shouldn't say this on air, but I'm going to do it. So when I decided to get my master's, I needed money. And I love to learn. I was like, okay, so I'm going to go back to school. And I didn't know what I would get my degree in. I didn't even want to go back to school because I was terrified of failing back then and, really into the whole, I have to be perfect. the cool thing was, in going back to school and getting my master's, it was all of the yeses that would sustain me. It was the A at the end of a class or end of a test when I was getting no's in acting. And I thought that was really cool. And then I wouldn't know this, obviously. I didn't know that this would be the case, but I'm a leader at my church now. And I had no idea that leadership would impact my life in the way that it has. And recently I had the opportunity to lead a group of volunteers at our conference where 21 countries were represented to learn how we do church at Mosaic. And I got to lead a group of over 100 volunteers. And I wouldn't have the language, I wouldn't have the capacity, I probably wouldn't even had the courage to step into leading in the first place if I hadn't began to pursue leadership that way. So that's what I would say.
Good answer. Are you a baseball fan? Houston Astros?
I am not, but go Stros. They won was it last year they won the...
Yeah, not this year, but last year they did. Okay, so we're going to go to Minute Maid Park, I think it is in Houston.
Yeah.
And we're going to announce you, Amaris is coming to bat.
Amaris.
See, I knew I was going to mess it up.
It's
Amaris
okay.
is coming to bat. What song is playing?
Oh, man. Let me tell you something. I still get chill bumps hearing this song. I Can Feel It Coming in the Air Tonight by Phil Collins.
Great joy.
Oh, so good. So good.
Lovely. Okay, we're almost done.
Okay.
Couple more questions. But first, tell people how they can find you online. Where do you live?
I live mostly on Instagram at Amaris310. I usually post through there, and then I'll attach it to my Facebook page, which is Amaris Davidson, and my Twitter, which is at Amaris Davidson.
Lovely.
Yeah.
Cool. We'll tag that all in the show notes.
Yay.
And I just want to say thank you very much for coming on the show. It's been very refreshing to talk to you. I respect your journey, and the fact that the seeds that you have planted are coming to bloom so quickly is very inspiring. So keep it going. Keep in touch.
If I could thank my friend Chris Pardall as well for just introducing us.
Shout out to Chris. Good looking out. We let our guests leave us with any last minute words of wisdom or advice. Mm-hmm. So I'll say thank you again and then let you take us home.
Last words of advice. Be the most you that you can be, because you are powerful beyond measure.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Thank you for listening to the Amani Experience podcast. You can check out the show notes on amaniexperience.com/podcast. Feel free to email us at podcast@amaniexperience.com. Please remember to leave us a review on the platform you are listening on, and share this podcast with anyone you feel would benefit from listening. See you soon for our next episode.